I'm joined on the line by the Wits Justice Project's Paul McNally, who's going to speak to us about something very exciting. It's the project's new citizen journalism program. Paul, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
Now, what is the citizen journalism program?
Yeah, we're a Justice Project. We're concerned with miscarriages of justice. So things that go wrong in the prisons, things that go wrong with the police, corruption, all these kinds of things. And we're based in Johannesburg. And the citizen journalism project that we're starting is about reaching out to places where we can't get to. So we're a very small team, and we want to expand our reach. So we want to find stories, miscarriages of justice, which are happening all around South Africa all the time. And we want to highlight these stories, train journalists to look for these stories, report on them, create radio pieces about them, and bring them back so the rest of South Africa can find out about them.
So how are you recruiting these citizen journalists?
That's a good question. We're going to put all their names in a hat and just pull their names out. We're going to look for basically through community advice officers. So they're paralegals that are based in communities. So often people that don't have access to lawyers, they'll go to a community paralegal. And these offices are all around the country, sometimes set, working out of tiny, really restricted resources places. And we're going to look to them to help us train someone that they'll have on their staff as a journalist. So we're not going to go to journalists, we're going to go to the activists. And we're going to train them in the way of being a journalist, and then hopefully get something very special from them.
So what are the specific characteristics that you're looking for in the people who will now be trained to be these citizen journalists?
We're going to look for people that are really entrenched in their communities. And obviously they have a passion and they care about these kind of subjects. But essentially the idea of starting a citizen journalism program is to look for people who are being fed these stories all the time. So if you're sitting in Johannesburg, you almost have to, and you're trying to look for a story in Limpopo, you really have to struggle to gain that trust in these people who might have these stories. And we're looking for people that already have that built in. People that are being presented with these stories every day and actually have nowhere to put them. They're kind of like almost being saturated with them. And we want them to really bring them out, and then so people in Johannesburg can find out about them, and people in their own communities can find out about them as well, because often they just go completely unreported.
There's really something to be said about having stories come from the places that they originated. You know, often as journalists, we are based in Cape Town or Johannesburg and report on stories in communities that we're not actually involved in. Is that also something that you guys have considered?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's a constant problem we're trying to always overcome about writing stories about people that are completely out of, where we're from and what we're doing. And I think by expanding this our community radio project that we've got already, expanding that into a citizen journalism program, I think will help immensely for the Justice Project to be able to be exposed to these kinds of stories, and also for everyone to get a perspective from the ground.
Now, what's going to happen to these stories? Where are they going to be published or broadcast? How will we be able to listen to the stories that are produced from these citizen journalists?
Yeah, I mean, the emphasis is on sort of a network. So we want to create a network of community radio stations which will air these stories. And also they will air each other's stories. Because at the moment, community radio, each station is in complete isolation. They operate on their own, often with limited resources, and they're not really using each other's content or each other's expertise. And we want to sort of break those barriers down. So we want to create this network of maybe 8 community stations around the country, and that's where all the stories will broadcast. And then we want to create a network in between community radio and more mainstream media. So that means we'll produce it for like a mainstream sort of Johannesburg, Cape Town media as well. And that's where people will be able to get a digest of all the stories that have been going on that week from our community activists, and also get exposed to that kind of information.
Paul, this is no doubt a massive undertaking. How far are you in the implementation phase of getting these radio stations, finding these citizen journalists?
Yeah, we're in the process of getting funding at the moment from an organization called Making All Your Voices Count. And it's part of a voting process. So we're asking, their first round is a social media voting sort of round. And we're in the process of asking people from our Facebook page online to vote for our project. And then it will move through to the next stage, and then hopefully from there it will get funded, and then from there it will come into existence.
So where can we vote for this project?
People can go to our Facebook page on the Wits Justice Project. If you look for Wits Justice Project on Facebook, there's a link there where people can cast their vote. And it's as simple as that.
Paul, while I've got you, won't you speak to us about the Wits Justice Project? What is it and what does the project hope to accomplish?
The Wits Justice Project is based in Johannesburg, and it's all about miscarriages of justice. And it's about exposing those through a combination of journalism and advocacy and law. So we don't just write stories and produce radio pieces, even though we do that. We're also about linking the subjects in our stories to legal advice. So hopefully after they've been written about and put into a story, there'll also be a next stage where they'll be able to get legal help and hopefully either get out of jail if they've been wrongfully convicted or at least find justice in some kind of way.
Where can we find the Justice Project online?
You can go to witsjusticeproject.com or also our Facebook page as well.
Thanks so much, Paul. And of course, you and I will be chatting again tomorrow for the next edition of The Science Inside. Can you give us a tiny little peek into what we'll be talking about?
The Science Inside tomorrow, we're going to be speaking about the water shortages. We have a hugely packed show. It's actually very exciting, even though when I was going into it, I didn't feel that water shortages were going to be anyway exciting. But we do everything from beer. Let me just say that we start with beer brewing. Is a good way to get into it. That's how we're going to get into the story.
Great.
Yeah.
So we'll chat about that tomorrow. That's Paul McNally, this time speaking on behalf of the Wits Justice Project. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks very much.